Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining our webinar today. My name is George Nemi, and I am the Juniper Solutions Specialist here at Bytespeed. Very excited to announce my all-star teammate for today, Jess Ward. We've been partnered with Juniper for about 8 years now. Very proud of the deployments we've done with them. If at any point during the webinar you have a question, feel free to use the Q&A button on your screen, and we'll be happy to answer them periodically. We will have a short quiz at the end of the webinar too to determine who is the winner of the signed football today. This quiz will be based on stuff we discuss in the webinar, so please be sure to pay attention and good luck. Now, before we run out of time on the play clock, let me pass it over to Jess.
All right. Well, thank you, George, and thank you everyone for spending some time with us today. So I'm going to share my screen, and what we had in mind was to cover just a little bit of the Mist side of Juniper and what we're doing from an AI perspective around the Juniper campus networking portfolio, which includes wireless, wired, and SD-WAN. I'm Jess Ward, so I cover the eastern half of the US for the Mist side of Juniper. And our team as a Mist specialist group supports the Juniper team and customers and prospects and partners, really driving the Mist AI-driven component of this solution. So just want to spend a little bit of time. I'm going to cover just a handful of slides just to show a little bit of the context about what we're doing, where we got started, what the customer reaction has been, market momentum, some things that might be useful as you're learning more about what we do and what makes us different. Then I want to talk about what we call Marvis. So Marvis is kind of the personification of our AI engine. And we were using a football theme, being Marvis as your 12th man in the IT organization. And what that really means is the solution that we have and the Mist portion of this is an AI engine that's collecting data from our wireless APs, from switches, our SD-WAN, and it does the analysis of the user experience in a microservices cloud. And we do that on behalf of IT because we want to make sure all the analysis is done so that you don't have to dig in there and figure out what's what or who's having a good experience or what a problem is. If a ticket gets generated, you'll see that this solution is designed to do all of that work for you using an AI engine that's very sophisticated and a lot of data that we're collecting. So I'll take you through that. And then I'll actually show you some implementation of our AI engine through a demonstration. And then that should be, about 30 minutes or so. And then we'll have some questions and some quizzes. So I usually start just by talking about the genesis of Mist, where we started. I think it does give us some context around what we do and how we deliver it. So the team you see here, this is the team that founded Mist when Mist was a startup. And this is a team that was running the wired switch and route business at Cisco. So if you look at Bob Friday there, he invented the wireless LAN controller. That's still the predominant architecture in wireless networks today when he founded Airspace. And Cisco acquired Airspace and came over with that acquisition. And Bob at that point was running the mobility practice at Cisco for location, for wireless, for networking. He was also part of the team that acquired Meraki while he was at Cisco. And really what he found is he wasn't satisfied with either solution. There was a lot of high performance, but a lot of complexity and cost with the controller-based solution from the Catalyst line. And there was simplicity, but not sophistication with the Meraki line. So his thought process as he was talking to customers who really wanted to understand the user experience to do more with less in terms of IT resources and take some of that burden off of their teams for the benefit of their users. He thought he basically had the idea that he could do this in a better way, leveraging data and AI. That was the whole beginning of Mist. This team left Cisco, founded Mist, which at that time was a wireless startup using an AI-based platform for all the analysis and things that I've been talking about. So if you kind of fast forward to that's where we started, and here's where we are today. So the market's reacted. We've had a huge market response to this solution that we put together because IT operations are fundamentally changed when you use this approach, and everybody benefits. Users benefit, IT teams benefit, stakeholders benefit. And you can see here that through the execution since the acquisition, we're in the top right leadership position in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for wired and wireless. We're also in the top right position top right quadrant for location services. Another brainchild of Bob's. He wasn't satisfied with hardware beacons he had to deploy and change batteries on, didn't like using Wi-Fi for location. And so he essentially built a Bluetooth antenna array, 16 element antenna array. And that sits on top of all of our wireless access points so that we can make location services a reality without the challenges that most people who have tried to deploy these things have found. So it's no beacons, no hardware, anything like that. It's just a built-in product of the AP, but can give you location-based services to track devices or people or know who's where and proximity messaging. Very sophisticated stuff. That's kind of what you see on the right. But the idea here is we put these things together as a leader in wired and wireless and a leader in indoor location services. You have a very complete solution that solves a lot of use cases, and it's all built into one interface and one product line. So I usually start with where we started. This is where we are, and this is how we got there. So this is kind of the journey of Juniper Mist throughout the last 5 years. And this is, I think you see the momentum, you see what's happening in the market with this approach and why customers have resonated with what we're doing and how we're transforming IT operations. And if you look at the far left, that was when we were separate companies. We were Mist as a startup wireless solution and Juniper. And in 19, the acquisition happened. Juniper acquired Mist, immediately got a move to the right there. And that was really on the vision. That was Juniper telling the market, hey, we acquired Mist, not just for the wireless component that we didn't have as Juniper, but we really wanted the AI platform that Mist had built. And we want to take that platform and apply it to the rest of the Juniper network campus stack, wired, SD-WAN, data center, things like that. And so that got the move immediately to the right. And then it really was about execution. We were just winning very large customers, lots of customers, small customers, you name it, people that saw this technology converted into customers. It was that natural of a flow. So you can see our movement to the top right and then holding that top right leadership position 2 years running has demonstrated that this is something that the market's reacted to. It's been disruptive. So we talk about outcomes. When customers make the transition to Juniper Mist solution, we know it's hard. We know incumbency changes are difficult. You're running whatever network you're running today. Making a change requires effort, and there's an element of risk involved. All of those things are what we fight as Juniper Mist every day, because everyone we talk to is running someone else's wireless or wired network. So our job is to convince them that it's worth the change. And we do a really good job at this. What you're seeing here is customer outcomes. These are outcomes you can depend on if you make the transition to the Juniper Mist wired and wireless solution, which you can see is really based off primarily IT operations. And what we're pride ourselves on are delivering a dramatically fewer trouble tickets once you put this solution in, dramatically less time to resolution when a ticket does come in. And that's because we have the data. We have the data and the analysis behind it to get to root cause and fix very quickly. The system is going to tell you who's having a problem, what the problem is, and what you need to do to fix it every time. And then the speed in which we can deploy this. So not only are we shipping APs right now in stock, but you can see that when customers get them, the time to value is very short. They place an order, we ship the gear, and then everything is designed for plug and play. Switches, APs, as soon as they get them, they connect them into the network, they call out to the cloud, pull a configuration, and you're up and running as quickly as you can connect them. And that's meaningful as most customers are really looking to meet deployment timeframes. As budgets come and go and become available, they want to act quickly and move and upgrade and those sorts of things. So this is a slide I think we're probably the most proud of the whole deck. These are big accounts, and these were big changes for them to make. You can imagine going into Fortune 1 or a Big Brown up there and telling them we've got a better solution. It's so good, you're going to replace everything you already have, and we were able to do it. So those are some of the key, what I would call sample verticals. So you can see all large, multinational, large deployments, but we go up and down. So there's a lot of value in the SME space. Anyone who has constrained IT resources that's looking for a better customer experience and user experience, that's what we strive to deliver, and that's where our results come from. And the reason why, what are we doing that is so different? The first thing is this solution was built for client level visibility. This was a challenge that Bob had at Cisco. He could not get the data to tell you how good someone's experience was on the network. So he wanted to build a new solution with Mist that was collecting everything about the user experience. That was his goal. And you need a lot of data to do that. So in this case, for the client level visibility that we provide on the wireless side, for example, we collect 150 states of every single user every minute. That data is going to the cloud. The AI engine takes that data and it contextualizes it. So it puts it in a meaningful display. It's doing all the analysis to know, is there a trend here? Is there an anomaly here? It's putting all that together so that there's action-oriented context around everything that we talk about. Here's what you need to do to fix. We found an issue. Here's what needs to be done to fix it. From an architecture perspective, this is what we call a modern cloud. It's microservices. So this is different than other cloud solutions. This is really what most are trying to migrate to. But the concept behind microservices is that every function of our solution is its own microservice. So that means if there's a bug, it's just contained in that microservice. If you want to add a new feature, it's you add it to this microservice. And instead of it being a single operating system like a controller or a controller in the cloud, this is a very elegant architecture that allows us to consistently deliver a better and better experience. And with that way that manifests itself for our customers every 2 weeks, we do a optimization to the cloud. There's going to be fixes in there. There's going to be new features there. It's just going to show up. We don't touch your deployed APs. We don't touch your deployed switches. It's just optimizations that are constantly being improved on in the cloud. And that's a meaningful way to continue to show value of this solution. And then I mentioned in the first slide, the magic quadrant for indoor location. This is what Bob invented. So this is location services as part of the wireless that can deliver different outcomes and solve for different use cases. That hardware I mentioned, the antenna, it rides for free on every access point. So you can start implementing different elements of location services on the same hardware. K through 12 is another strong vertical for us. This is probably one of our biggest growth verticals. Bytespeed has a great reputation in delivering a great K through 12 experience. I thought I'd call that out as a specific vertical. We do a lot of work with Bytespeed on, but everything from top 20 school districts in the country to single private schools and everything in between. I would argue that K through 12 really benefits from our solution more than anyone else. They're so constrained with IT resources. Great IT folks they have on staff are constantly getting poached by those that can pay them a lot more. So we pride ourselves on being a solution that in the K through 12 world really helps them out, using our system to do a lot of the analysis and all the work so they can run on lean IT and still deliver a great experience for, in their case, it's a mission critical network. Wireless is absolutely mission critical. They run their testing on it. That's a primary access layer. So for those K through 12s out there, we really we respect what you do and the limited amount of resources you have to do it. So I think this is where we've really been able to deliver differentiated value, especially relative to the more complex and expensive solutions that are out there. I thought I'd take a minute just to talk. This is the implementation of the vision. If you remember the Magic Quadrant slide in 2019, we got a lot of credit for Juniper's acquisition telling this story. This is what we've been able to deliver. And what you can see at the top is everything is about the Mist AI engine. I mentioned it before. The reason why Juniper acquired Mist was not for wireless. It was for that piece at the top, an AI platform. And that AI platform, now, if you were listening to the Juniper earnings report, is responsible for enterprise networking as Juniper's biggest growth vertical. It's the #1 revenue source now for Juniper, not service provider, not anything else. It's the enterprise network. And that came from the acquisition, really with that Mist AI piece you see at the top. And of course, we started with wireless. That was something we had at Mist. We added the Juniper EX platform. So we had that for wired. We've added SD-WAN with a tunnelless architecture through our 128T acquisition under the Mist cloud. We're moving to the data center. We have Apstra there doing software optimization in data centers. So what you're seeing is a different approach to networking. We don't talk speeds and feeds. We talk about outcomes. We talk about what this Mist AI engine can do to assist our customers with their IT operations and essentially provide a better user experience on the network. And it's all about the data. So if you look at the bottom left, you'll kind of see the journey that the data takes. I mentioned we're collecting all of this data. We're collecting it from the wireless, we're collecting it from wired, we're collecting from SD-WAN, and that data comes into the Mist cloud and it begins to run through the AI engine. So the AI engine is taking that data. I mentioned that it contextualizes it, it makes it actionable. So we know what to do with the data. The data science toolbox you'll see as this continues to move. This is where you get a lot of anomaly detection. The beauty of this is with the right data, we can be proactive. In other words, we can tell you about an issue before a user calls to complain. And we can see things are trending the wrong way. So my network normally operates this way. Now we're seeing a meaningful deviation from normal. So that's called anomaly detection. And what's really great about that is many times IT will know about an issue before it becomes a problem. And with the right data and the right analysis, you'll get those kind of results. Anytime you can be proactive solving a network problem, everybody wins. Marvis, our 12th man. So this is an implementation of AI, which allows folks that are non-technical to interface with the system to get information. So I'll show you that in two different ways. We have a kind of a display of everything we see that requires an action to fix. That's called Marvis Actions. And then we have a chatbot. And the chatbot just allows someone to type a question in and get that information back, non-technical information. So I'll show you this in the demo. But this has been very helpful with help desk, for example. Folks who are IT generalists, they're not supposed to be experts in anything, but they have to be kind of generalists and know a little bit about a lot of technology. So they may not be wireless or networking experts, but they can get to root cause of an issue just by interfacing with the chatbot. And in doing that, you're taking that workload off of your IT engineering team, your IT architect team. So again, it's a situation where everybody wins. Help desk is empowered to get resolution, and that takes the burden off of IT. So you start to see across a large organization, like some of the logos you saw before, at scale, this becomes a material benefit to how they do IT operations, leveraging this technology. Now, of course, when we have the right data, we want to make decisions with that data and then let the customers know, here, we made a change. And then we're measuring that change using reinforcement learning. Did it improve things? Did it stay the same? Did it make it worse? So those are the things we do through reinforcement learning. And a great example of that is radio resource management. So you can think of, if you've been in wireless for a long time, you probably have scars trying to use any vendor's RRM and created issues or cascading channel changes, all those sorts of things. I can tell you we have one customer now that insists on doing static channel and power on wireless. Every other customer, including logos you saw on the slide, have migrated to our radio resource management. So the system tunes itself, channel, power, all those things, because we have the data to know that this change should improve things. And then we measure that change to see if it actually did. So think about having this running all the time. So your system's always tuned, always ready to be optimized and making those changes without IT having to get involved. And you start to see the power of what this can do. So this is a little more detailed. This is just telling you what are the components. So when we talk about Juniper, the Mist solution, you'll also hear it called AIDE, AI-driven enterprise. This is what we're talking about. So I'm putting the pieces together now that we've introduced some concepts. But at the top, of course, this is the Juniper Mist cloud. This is doing the AI. This is the microservices architecture. And then the bottom tier are the actual hardware components. So the different wireless access points. I'll talk a little more about our 6E in a minute. I do want to call this out in the bottom left. This is something called Mist Edge. So if you imagine a lot of those big logos you saw there, were running traditional controller-based networks that Bob created 20 years ago. So they built their network around central data forwarding. User connects to the wireless, all that traffic goes to a controller. That's where your VLANs are, that's where your policy enforcement is, and it's not forwarding locally and dropping it off locally at the switch. A lot of our customers still run in that mode, and in some cases, there are very good reasons to do that. A lot of healthcare does it, a lot of higher ed does it, manufacturing, retail usually does not in the stores, K through 12 usually does not, it's just additional overhead you don't need. But what this is designed to do is if you are running in a traditional controller-based solution that's forwarding traffic to one spot, the controller, we can drop that Mist Edge appliance right in there, wherever you have the controller. And now you get all the goodness of our AI and all the cool stuff I've talked about for IT operations without having to re-architect the network. We just drop the Mist Edge appliance wherever you want to centralize your data, usually where the controller was, and then you're up and running, no problem, we'll forward traffic there. So with other cloud solutions, I know that's sometimes a challenge, and I just want to make sure that we've built this product to do nothing but tunnel terminations and it scales up to 10,000 APs per box. So we're in a great position for doing a lot high scalability. These are the switches. So of course you've got all the EX switch line from Juniper. Great. Well, we got a lot of lift out of this, primarily because Juniper runs a very sophisticated, very powerful operating system called Junos. Junos is great, built by engineers for engineers. So if you weren't an engineer that liked to get into the CLI, that was a hurdle that a lot of times Juniper had previously. People having to learn a new Junos operating system that may have been familiar with Cisco iOS, and they were concerned about making that change. The beauty of the Mist acquisition from the switch perspective is it brought a web-based interface to Junos. So now I can deploy a Juniper switch. It's zero touch provisioned. It has a totally web-based configuration template. I don't have to know anything about Junos at all to configure this. Even advanced things like EVPN, VXLAN, Fabric, it's all in the Mist UI. You don't have to know a line of code. But for those that really like Junos and want to get into the CLI to do things that may not be completely exposed within the UI, right from the Mist cloud, you can pull up a secure shell and you can do all your Junos commands right through there. So we're covering the entire base here, all the sophistication and power of Junos, the ease of cloud managed, wired, the ability to set it up without knowing any code at all. And then you really start to see how this can take off and provide a lot of scale. And then on the bottom right is SD-WAN. So this is the 128T acquisition. This was Juniper SRX is now under the Mist cloud for firewalling. So you have all this capability to do what we will call client to cloud experience. Every part of the client's journey, we'll have access and AI telemetry giving us data to make sure they're having a good experience. And if they're not, who it's affecting, what the problem is, and how to fix it. That's pretty much it. I did want to take just a second to talk a little bit more about Wi-Fi 6E. So wireless is usually one of our first conversations we have with customers, just because Wi-Fi transitions more quickly than wired does or SD-WAN does. People are generally looking every couple of years to do there's usually new Wi-Fi technology out there that's looking people to potentially replace APs. So a lot of our conversations start with Wi-Fi, and new iterations of Wi-Fi standards tend to drive change because they're new radios, new hardware. You can't upgrade from a Wi-Fi 6 AP to a Wi-Fi 6E AP with software. It's a hardware refresh. So a lot of our discussions with customers talk about what's in it for them moving to Wi-Fi 6E. And in this case, it's a big deal. This is a completely new spectrum that you can run Wi-Fi clients on at the 6 gigahertz spectrum. If you've been in Wi-Fi for a long time, we've had 2.4 gigahertz and we've had 5 gigahertz, and that's really been it. There's been different iterations of trying to optimize those two things, but it was still those are the only two lanes of the highway we had. With Wi-Fi 6E, we're introducing an entire lane, and that's the 6 gigahertz band. Clients have really caught on to this. You're seeing lots of clients shipping with 6E chipsets. The new MacBooks all have it in there. The new iPhone will have it in there. Samsung has it in their phones. iPads have it. And the reason why they're developing it is it's this big of a deal. Now you've got 3 different bands that are running simultaneously on one access point at one time. It's a big deal. So the AP45 is by far our most popular model. Probably 80+% of our sales in the last year have been the AP45. It's a great price point. It's super advanced. It's 4x4, 4 spatial streams. It does software definable radios. So this system will do this for you, but the system will tune itself to run maybe dual 5 gigahertz and the 6 gigahertz band, or leave 1 or 2 APs with 2.4 enabled to service those clients, but have the rest be run dual 5 and 6. So you have all this tuning capable that our RRM does automatically to just make sure we're providing the best service possible. This AP will give you all of that functionality. It also includes the location piece I've talked about a few times. That antenna array sits right in the AP45. So if you're going to put something in, you want it to last for another 7 or 8 years, absolutely the AP45 is what you want to go with. And I would encourage everybody to go 4x4 with the 6E investment. You will start seeing the clients that can do that, and you're going to get a bigger benefit from that. So just a quick plug on the EP45. Well, at this point, with just a few minutes left, I was just going to show you a handful of things here within the demo. And then I think we'll stop and ask questions and things after that. So let me just pull this up here. And you can see I'm just logged into the Mist dashboard. So the Mist dashboard is going to display all the information, the results of our AI analysis are going to be presented here. Now, what's very popular for customers is not just to have this data live here, but to tie this into your trouble ticket system. So ServiceNow, we already have built-in integration for, but if any other ticketing system that you have, as long as it can either take in webhooks or have API calls, we can essentially integrate with it. And the beauty of that is I get into the demo, you're going to start to see information I'm showing you in the demo can be presented in your ticketing system as a ticket. So we find an issue, you don't have to be logged in here to see it. We can send it through a ticketing system so that you can see, oh, I need to add these VLANs on this switch in this location. And it'll be right there in the ticket without you ever having to log into here. So keep in mind the data that I'm showing you is available and usually consumed through however you do your your ticketing and support system today. But the first thing I'll show is something called SLEs. And this is one way that when I talk about contextualizing the data through AI and displaying it, this is it. So SLEs are service level expectations. And what I'm measuring here is go back up at this location over the last 7 days, I'm monitoring these things for every single client. I'm measuring how long it takes them to connect to the network, successful connections, what their coverage is, roaming, all of those things are displayed for me here. So I know how well the network is performing at the user experience level. For example, if I look at time to connect, if I click into this SLE, probably our most popular one, what I'm measuring here is how long it takes for somebody to go through these steps of any wireless connectivity. So if you're connecting to a wireless network, you go through an authorization stage, you go through an association phase, you get a DHCP address, then you get out to the internet. So these 4 things happen at one for anyone who's trying to connect to a wireless network, and we're measuring that experience across each. So the idea behind it is if I know how long it takes and I have a goal on which we want to say everybody should connect through, this is our ability to see how well we're doing. So the goal that's here is a goal that we set. And what we're saying is every 2 seconds, everybody should be able to connect successfully to the wireless network. And in that sense, anything that doesn't, if it takes longer than 2 seconds, then we'll be able to show that as basically a failure that gives us an element to break this down. So what I'm going to show you here is any of the failures associated with this piece. And in doing so, what you'll see is we're tracking all of this for every single user. And if I just work my way left to right, I can see the timeline of those failures. So it's taken me longer than 2 seconds to connect to the network to go through these steps. So I'm going to figure out what time of day, was it related to a system change, et cetera. You got all this data. As we continue to move, we're going to see the distribution of those failures across whatever operating system. If it was concentrated on the access point or wireless band, any type of device. Incredibly useful information. If we see that we're turning the wrong way, 89% of our time we beat our goal, 11% of the time we didn't. So let's dig into those failures. You start to get all the context around that in a way that makes this very meaningful. And these are the actual devices. These are the actual devices that failed. These are the host names. You can see the MAC addresses, what OS, the last AP they connected to. So imagine someone calling to say they're having an issue with a wireless network. What we're able to do at that point is be able to break them down through each part of this piece and display this in a way that makes the data usable and actionable. So that's an example of the SLEs. And the SLEs are across all these metrics: time to connect, successful connects, your coverage, everything that's going to give you the type of measurements quantifiably to say how well the network is performing. I mentioned Marvis, so let me just jump into that real quick. So Marvis, again, being your 12th man, there's 2 ways. I told you that Marvis provides data for you. The first is what we call Marvis Actions. Marvis Actions will allow you to get all this data relative to the network that we have access to. And essentially what this means is if this number is anything but 0, we're telling you we've identified something that requires an action to fix because it's affecting the user's experience. And we can start this from everything around layer 1. So if you've got a bad cable, our system can tell you that. and it's going to tell you the reporting AP. So this AP is reported that it's got a bad cable connected to this switch on this port. So I know where it is, I know who it's affecting, what the issue is. I've got all the data there to tell me everything I need to go dispatch somebody to go replace the cable. And you can imagine how difficult that can be to resolve on its own, and our ability to give you this data to know exactly what to do and how to fix it is what's meaningful. Connectivity. So this is when you're connecting to the network. We talked about this. We can tell you if you're having DHCP issues, on what server, who it's affecting, what needs to be done to fix it. All of these things are what we're collecting. And again, this is your cup of coffee view. If you come in the morning and this is any number other than 0, there's something we've identified that needs to be done to fix the user experience. So we try to put all of that in one spot using AI to do the analysis and then display the results. This is the type of stuff you can imagine going into a ticketing system for missing VLAN, for example. So let's say the AP we're plugged into doesn't have the VLANs defined, or the switch the AP is plugged into doesn't have the VLANs defined on that port. It's in the wireless configuration. The AP is tagging that traffic with a VLAN tag, but when it hits the switch, the VLANs aren't defined. It's not trunked. Well, that's a bad thing. You're going to be able to connect. That's a hard thing to troubleshoot. User says, I'm connected. You're checking all the connectivity things, but they can't pass any traffic. Very common. This happens all the time with customers. It's one of our most popular Marvis actions. And you can see how prescriptive we can be. So you can see this is the AP. This is the switch it's plugged into. These are the VLANs that should be there, and they're missing on this port. So imagine this coming across through a ticket. If I can be on a beach somewhere, I can be anywhere. I see this trouble ticket come in, but when it has this data, I know exactly what needs to be done to fix it. And I go through my switch management. If it's not a Juniper switch, if it's a Juniper switch, by the way, this is all automated. This would all be there all the time. You would never have to get this issue because we will add those VLANs if they are missing. But if this is a Cisco switch or Aruba or something like that, LLDP snooping will give us this data. So my point is, if you're managing the switches through another interface and you have this data, you can just go add those VLANs. So this is an example of how Marvis is helping you holistically across our entire footprint with every part of data that we have and that we collect and we display for you. The other thing I mentioned was our ability to use a chatbot. And the chatbot is going to give you the data that allows anybody to interface with the system. And even if you're not a network expert. So imagine you're in the help desk and you are hearing some issues about a site. You can just say, show me unhappy users. And what the system is going to do that is taking that natural language and it's going to create a query that says, here's the display. It's saying, here are the clients we're seeing having Wi-Fi issues at this site. So they picked looks like this person's having some issues. If I can select on this person, just by clicking them, you see that the workflow is building out. So here are the issues. It looks like there are authorization issues for this user. And I get to keep collecting here. And I can see here all the options I have for remediation. The clients had authorization failures 100% of the time on 5 gigahertz. So I've got some data here and I can just keep digging. So I like to go to client insights because now it takes us back to this page we started on, but now I'm filtered for this user for this period of time. I could have said, show me unhappy users last Tuesday or something like that. But since I didn't put any time range, it just defaulted to today. So a couple cool things we can show here that give you some sense of how the system works is I mentioned those 150 states it collects for every user. This is the type of information we're collecting. And we display that in this context of the who, what, when, where, why, and how. So on this user, we can see, yeah, they're having real problems. They're definitely unhappy. And anytime you see this paperclip, what that means is we have a packet capture. We've got a packet capture waiting for you in the cloud. We've already done the capture. So the system is deciding that, okay, a capture is going to help us diagnose this issue. So we're going to store that capture for you in the cloud so you don't have to go take it. Now, this was today, but this could have been last Tuesday. It could have been, any point in time in the last week. I could have had this data and that capture sitting there waiting for me so that I can get to root cause very quickly without having to go do a packet capture and grab a laptop analyzer and drag somebody out of a school or a conference room, follow them around with that analyzer and hope they hope that situation repeats itself while I'm scanning. That's all gone. You never have to do that again. The system will do it for you. And you can see we've gone from, what was a query of who's unhappy to a packet capture of why they're unhappy, in about 3 clicks. So again, this is a way that the system makes the data actionable and usable. This is a pervasive across the entire platform, and it's done and designed to be something that you can deploy at scale across all your footprints and give you the kind of data to know how well the network's performing, any issues related to the users, and anything that is going to help you just make sure everyone's having a good experience. So this is quickly just the what I would call like the day 2 and beyond implementation. All the day 0, day 1 stuff is built into the configuration and the zero touch. So that stuff we can always go down another time. But what tends to be the most continuously valuable aspect of our solution is how day 2 and beyond operations work and how the system helps you make sure we're having a good experience for all of your users. So I'll stop there for now. The idea was just to really kind of introduce a few of these concepts. And then, if you have other questions or at some point you want to go take a meeting and dig in a little more deeper to your environment, we can customize the demo and customize the presentation to things that we know affect you. So I'll stop sharing for now. And George, I'll kick it back to you.
Fantastic, Jess. Doesn't look like we had anybody with any questions. So once again, you're doing too good of a job over there explaining everything. One question I did have though, Jess, for the time to connect, that 2 seconds seems a little aggressive. Is that kind of the industry standard or something Mist does?
Yeah, that's a great question. It is not industry standard. Industry standard is 4 seconds. So we purposely changed it to 2 seconds. It is adjustable. Every one of those goals are adjustable, but we change it to 2 seconds so that we can throw some more alarms and make the demo a little more interesting. But it'll come as a default of 4 seconds. That's the industry average. So absolutely.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jess.